When I talk about adding context, it's about saying who's going to use that. For me, it's only information. I'm under a roof, and I really, if it's raining, it doesn't really make a difference to my life. Now, if I was the pilot that flew me over here yesterday from Dublin, that would be knowledge, because this is going to have a very, very definite impact on how I'm going to land this plane, right? So all of a sudden it has a completely different meaning, which is what I'm looking for. I want to transform that data into knowledge so we can put it in the hands of people and say, right, guys, this is what you need to create an action for a determined outcome. And I think sometimes we're missing that when we get a lot of, a lot of data processed and a lot of reports and OLAP cubes and nice views and charts. But the question is that not just confirming what we are? We aim to create a report to show a picture, and it funny enough it often ends confirming the view we had, because it is biased by the person who produced it or the person who asked for it. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for context. We're looking at three different ways of understanding that. So one is tagging, right? So for example, in our CRM structure, very much looking for the ability for someone to tag a problem or a person, a resource, so what is the value? So if we have an organizational chart where I understand I can tag people's expertise, all of a sudden that organizational chart gives me a different degree of value. If I know what customers have a tendency to get super irate very, very quickly, there are some of them, that is a context around solving a problem that is different from someone who says, oh, this is a very laissez-faire, relaxed, whatever, it's a different kind of customer. So I'm looking for actively tagging information as I capture it into the data sets. Now we're talking specifically CRM, right? I want to make sure that we're gathering this kind of data to really, really understand the context of when a resource is being deployed or an outcome is developed. People is similar, right? So when is a resource deployed and what was the outcome? So we have a lot of people that are involved in, let's say, project managers. It's a great group of people. Lots of project managers, and they are deployed in different kinds of projects. Now, if I can pull all that back and I can look in project documentation of the data generated by these projects, I can start gaining patterns. I can see, well, when this project manager or this program manager has been involved, the outcome is very, very different than when this person is employed, right, in the project. So I want to understand who's involved, who had an impact, either internally or our outsourced partners. Wherever those people are, I need to know in my interaction, in the data I'm gathering around a customer outcome, who touched it, because it has a significant impact down the road. So how, some of this is just stuff we can tag because they are facts, but some of it then also requires more refined means of getting people involved, and that's where we're looking a lot at gamification as a new thing. I don't know how much gamification is discussed out in the business today. I think it's going to be a huge buzzword in a couple of years. If not, then well, you heard it here first anyway then. So gamification is all about how do you create games out of what you're asked to do. So liking is an action. You don't get rewarded for that, right? This is just it's a comment you put on something. But internally in the business context, we've developed some kudos systems, saying, right, so for example in a technical support department, well, if we develop a currency around kudos that you can hand to different people for a job well done in the tool, So Microsoft, as an example, do that within their SharePoint and Link environment amongst their own teams, that you can give people a thumbs up for a job well done. And you can earn different badges according to how good you were. A little bit like the Xbox, funny enough. Maybe they were looking over the shoulders of some of their colleagues. But it's about creating a way to one-up people, if you will, in the work environment. So we're rolling out, so part of OC Tanner's reward recognition platform, we're trying to roll out this ability to give people kudos, which gives us an understanding of who is valuable in our organization. And what it does is it creates an element of reward recognition, which makes things more exciting for people, if you will. So that's all well and good. These are concepts around people. They're concepts around how do we tag information. But very, very critically is that fundamental ability to link two things together. So my data, in the case I work in specifically now, is in our knowledge management system. We got loads of data around different solutions, different policies, different ways of solving problems. And when we have an interaction with a customer, either an account management or customer service, be able to say, well, do you know what? In this interaction, I used this piece of information. That is very, very handy to be able to link these two things for a couple of reasons. One, efficiency. When you have people typing in notes, either on their pens and paper or they're doing it digitally, they're storing information that is unstructured. It's very, very difficult to necessarily track afterwards unless you're using text mining and analysis to understand, well, what are those notes? But if I can get documented solutions, documented approaches to solving problems, and I can get them linked into the database, well, then linking a solution to a case allows us to walk away saying, hey, I got a database link. And they're much more powerful to report on, build parators on, saying, well, when this knowledge was used, what's the effect of that? And also it saves time. Capturing notes is not necessarily the most inspiring work or either the most efficient if you have other ways of doing it. Sometimes I'm asked to capture notes in meetings and I dread it. I don't like typing. So,
Thomas, do you apply that? Do you provide that knowledge when they're interacting with the case, to say that they start? This is if they put in roughly this is the case, then suddenly those hints comes up. This is the way you should do it.
Absolutely. So if you can start tracking whether or not people are on the path to perform a step or a process that requires a specific intervention, then that will be surfaced saying, guys, this is what you should be doing. But also, if you're venturing off into something that is unknown, we try to detect that and say, oh, do you know what? This is not something we know, so document along the way. But also, if we can tag the same people saying, well, we don't know the solution to this specific problem, but we know that these people that have been working in similar cases, they have been successful. So again, we don't know the problem, but you might want to ping one of these three guys because they have a success rate within that classification of issues to deal with, right? So then all of a sudden you're building completely different links. You're starting to say, well, I'm capturing knowledge in the workflow. That's great. But also I'm surfacing resources that we know have a proven statistically valid ability to help. It doesn't mean they're going to solve this one, but there's a bigger chance that you ask that guy instead of that guy. Now, for me, that's when we talk about context. That's when we talk about knowledge, and that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking at being able to pull data out of our big warehouses and really understand how this is deriving business benefit and how a user should interact. So I'm looking at this. I'm trying to form, and that's my recommendation here, is to form this as independent science, right? This is not necessarily something that you get your customer service director to fund as a little team to go off and start looking at some of the sales data over here and start looking at some of the engineering. It's too far away. So there's a need for a neutral body, if you will, that taking a step back, saying, well, what is it we have access to and what is it we're storing? So people process tools is I think it's very important to look at it in that direction, not the other way around. And sometimes, you know, in IT departments, we could look at it reverse, you know. Let's get a great shiny new tool. I mean, I work for a company in the Valley, right, where we like developing software, and surely we can fix something with a patch. But then all of a sudden the process needs to conform to that patch, and the people will just have to jump along. And guess what? They don't. So I'm looking at certainly the people process tools and then powering it by statistics. I really am a big fan of understanding what is the probability and what is the outcome based off of something more than someone's opinion. I think we have a lot of heuristic data decisions being made in various companies, and I think we have an opportunity to take some steps back. And there's an ongoing discussion around, you know, data science today, saying, you know, the new, you know, Intel Inside, that's statisticians, right? If you're not hiring statisticians, you're missing a key resource. The problem is, who are the ones hiring, and who are the ones writing the CVs, and do we even know what we're looking for? That has been a challenge to convince the right groups.
I mean, if you look at people using, for example, OLAP tools, there are only a few. If you have 100 people, there's only a few of them that has the right mindset to be able to draw the right conclusions and use train of thought, so to say.
Yes, and you know, here we have a label. You are an analyst. You're a business systems analyst. That's great. What does that really mean? And it's connecting the dots between you want someone who is very strong in statistics, yet can convey that in a language that someone else wants to hear or is able to comprehend. And that's a challenge, right? That's being able to marry a very, very deep technical data mindset with being able to show that in a very, very simple way. These are the people that I will certainly pay an absolute premium to hire.
I work in the pharma industry, and so doing science properly is very, very important in clinical trials to understand what variables are important ones and which ones have an impact and which ones don't. And some of probably the key people in that part of the industry are the statisticians.
Yep.
They are the most well-paid folks. They are the ones that are targeted and sought after. So, and I totally agree with you. We've got to take this type of approach. You've got to understand variables that matter, and those are the guys that can understand the variables that matter. So that's the sensible way to go.
So you know, rows or columns in data tables, that's the same as pills, right? Which pill works and which one does not. The problem when you say clinical trials, so I often use the pharma industry as the way to look at that, right? The problem is getting a new drug cleared, we can take 5-7 years to go through that process to really understand the impact, right? That's great. So eBay is 17 years old. So we could have made 3 big decisions so far, almost, right? We don't necessarily have that time. But what we do have instead is, you know, 200 million users that are constantly out there. So we're generating more data quicker. And of course, we don't have the FDA in America that we have to answer for. We're not killing people here. So say we're just a website, right? So there's smaller risk. But I'm really looking at critical thinking, like the universities are trying to produce people that can look at something and discern what's important or where to find additional information. So critical thinking as a term. Knowledge to be able to take that action that is relevant in producing that outcome. So we're missing a data science lab. Now where does that sit? Who owns the data scientists? Who dares hire them? And who can take that holistic, rational approach? Today, I'm not necessarily seeing a whole lot of organizations that are active in making that choice. I think from a CIO perspective, rationalization is a great excuse to step into this field, saying we're generating more and more data. Right now, we can manage it, kind of, but let's just do 3, 5, 10 years out. This is going to be a huge, unmanageable thing. We're going to have archives upon archives, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tier 10 storage. So being able to discern what big data is important could be the rationale for developing this department. And likewise, being able to take that extra departmental data and say, well, this is something that, again, the R&D guy is saying, here's the customer service data, here's some insights that will truly make an impact on your product. It has a wow factor because typically R&D haven't been looking at that. They've been busy developing the next gizmo. So getting a real-life injection from a couple of 100 million customers might actually be something that moves. And certainly from a data perspective, causation is not something that you just see. It is something that is derived through statistical analysis by very, very sharp-minded statisticians.
Tom, can I ask
Yeah.
a question? Jeremy Boss from the Audit Commission. It's interesting because certainly in the public sector there seems to be less and less acceptance that you need to have those experts in-house. The view is you throw the data out there and someone will come up with a solution for you for free. So I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think sort of the information scientist as a skill is perhaps something that we've undervalued. But I also see the challenge where the armchair auditor, which is what gets thrown at us, they're cheap, aren't they? So how do you square those two things, I guess?
Yeah, so I look at that in terms of value, right? So we need to be able to tie all the way back to, well, what does this mean? What is the P&L of your data set, right? What is it actually saving you? So I spent a lot of years in Dell in warranty cost, where for a long time, keep tying back, so we're capturing data and diagnostics. We're understanding which cases are causing problems that ultimately ends up with a part being replaced in a laptop. Fantastic. That costs money, right? So then you start to look at, well, what are the problems that end up being fixed with a hardware intervention, right? Okay, so how about we take that data, knowing what we're doing to solve a problem, and send that over to engineering and say, guys, the next product that you create shouldn't have this function because it keeps breaking. On this laptop, I could mention, around 5 or 6 items that have been derived purely from that data set. Key one would be that latch that used to be on laptops. That broke all the time, and no customer could ever replace it because you have to pull out the screen and put the new latch in. Simple spring mechanism. So putting in stronger hinges was enough. That's the data set. That's what I'm talking about. But then you need to pull that saving back and say, that analysis saved us $100 million. Then you get people's attention. That's really it. I think I'm being given a warning. I need to stop talking. So I'll do that. And I'll just leave with these key takeaways. Not just a technical problem, need context, business outcome, and that science gap. Who's going to step up and take that? That's it.